Welcome to the shop. So today we're going to talk about something that happens all the time when I'm at the field. Whether I screw up or one of my buddies screws up, we're crashing planes. And in some cases it's not a big deal, but just going back to the shop, repairing, sometimes that's fun. But a lot of times it can be really frustrating. Why did I do that? Why did I wreck my beautiful plane that I cared so much about? So in this video, I'm going to talk about just a couple simple things that can prevent these crashes. And they're easy, but yet we still continue to forget. Also, a couple tips that should help you out. I recommend you kind of going through this video because I know you're going to learn something, and I know you're also going to relate to why the crash happened. Because if you've been flying any length of time, you probably crashed a plane, and that one you can identify with. So hope you stick around and watch. Enjoy. So first thing I want to do is just talk about the simple stuff, like, for example, the pre-flight check. And a lot of us, you're probably rolling your eyes going, yeah, I do that all the time. And that's great. And it has prevented so many crashes. I have seen people that don't do that, and, well, you know where that's going to go. So on the pre-flight check, I look to make sure the servos are going the right direction. And if it's the multiple flights in that day, of course they're going in the right direction. I have had instances where I have made an adjustment, a mechanical adjustment to the control surface, and took off the control horn on the servo, and I put it on upside down. Therefore, up is down and down is up. That was a wild ride because I didn't do a pre-flight check after that. The other thing that I have found with servos fail. Flap servos fail. And by checking all the control surfaces before you take off, really helps your plane return nicely. Had whole right wing on my Tiger Cat not work after the second flight. I've had flap servos fail. And boy, let me tell you, you go into full flap and one of the flaps doesn't come down all the way, it's going to be exciting. So those kind of things get out of the way. The other is where to put the battery, what type of battery. These two 6S 5,000 milliamp batteries have a 5.5 ounce difference in weight. That's a big deal. So just grabbing any one of them is going to be a problem. My 2200s 4S, there's maybe an ounce or so of difference. Probably not as big of a deal, but in some planes that makes a difference in the flight characteristics. So what I'm doing now is underneath on the cockpit, I will have a piece of tape and I'll write some notes on there, the type of battery, where it's placed. I'll also put marks inside the battery compartment on exactly where it goes, but also flight characteristics. My A10 likes to land with about 10% throttle. My Viper lands with 0 throttle. And if I haven't been flying some of these planes in a while, and I've got 30-something planes, I'm going to forget. And it's really good to just refresh your memory on that. So I put that in there, and it prevents a lot of problems. Number one reason why people are breaking their planes, and that's in landings. It's always the exciting part when I'm watching YouTube videos. I like to see the landings because that's an opportunity for a good crash. And believe me, I've posted several of them. I know this. It can all be prevented. Most of it can. There's going to be times where, I've practiced landings and I still muff them up every once in a while. It just happens. But by practicing landings, I have a lot more confidence. So I'm flying relaxed, having a good time. Comes in for landing, and I'm not all stressed out about it. I will spend many batteries just practicing landings. And I find that a lot of people don't like to do that. I implore you, please do that. You will save your planes by just practicing landings. All planes land a little different, whether you have flaps on, flaps off, half flap, full flap, depending on weather. And then the other part is power. I find that a lot of people struggle with landing this P-51. That's because they come in with almost no power, and it does a ground loop every time. Coming in with power is how this one likes to land. I have some planes, like my Viper, I cut the throttle way out there and glide it in. And for me, that lands perfect that way. So every plane's a little different. I implore you to practice landings and get your landings down on your planes. All right, next, I gotta admit, sometimes my skills just ain't up to the task. I might be flying a plane that's a little over my skill set. And I've seen that happen at the field as well.
Okay,
You know,
slow her down,
part
slow
of
her
it,
down.
and I'll go through a couple things. One is I have found that if I'm flying fast planes or hard planes for battery after battery after battery, I started losing concentration, and I can tell as I'm flying, I'm going through maneuvers, and my brain's not working right. I'm a little older, so maybe that's just normal. But that's what I found, that I need to stop, grab a plane that I can just sit in a chair and just cruise around doing figure eights and just having fun and doing silly stuff. Sometimes that resets my brain, and then I can go back to doing some more aerobatics and some things that are a little bit more challenging. I found that really helps out. The other thing that I've really noticed is, and I said about skill sets, is there are times where I've seen, and myself included, where this plane is over my skill set. I watch people at the field that, wow, they're way behind the plane. What I mean by that is the plane, they're responding to how the plane flies. They are not telling the plane what to do. You know, when you go up to do a loop and a maneuver, a split S, and all of a sudden, you know, it looks like the plane is doing something different. But if you know you input those controls, you know what the plane is going to do. A lot of people aren't flying that way. They're just going, they're just responding to the plane. What I would recommend is get in closer. A lot of people fly way too far away, and they lose orientation on the plane, and then it's gone. So, you know, for me, I learned by flying in real close and really focusing on controlling that plane and not having the plane control me was a big help. Sometimes the conditions aren't right. Sometimes it's really windy, and I'm going to fly anyway because I'm an idiot, and I break a plane. Well, duh. All right, last thing, really, control surface or mechanical things. Control surfaces will fail. Some of them you can catch. Some of them during your pre-flight, you should be looking at that stuff. And if there's a servo that's a little jittery or not acting upright, probably should swap that out. It's going to bite you if you don't. And then the other is just routine maintenance, taking a look. A lot of these clevises that we get on these planes, they're cheap plastic, and they crack and break. Well, that can happen. So, but checking those things periodically really, you know, be a big benefit. The other is that we'll have some things electronically that just malfunction on us. So, for example, the receiver not set in the right place. Usually you check that stuff, and you'll see that stuff in pre-flight, you know, for the maiden flight. Do that range check. It saves you a lot of hassle and a lot of issues down the road of having a, you know, losing connection. Doesn't happen very often. These radios and systems work exceptionally well, but every once in a while things fail. The thing that electronically that can fail and does are the ESCs or the BEC that controls the receiver, or powers the receiver, I should say. That sometimes can fail, and when that happens, or you've overloaded, and I've done this where I've overloaded a speed controller, and all of a sudden I was losing out on my controls, so it just overheated. Didn't give it time to cool down a little bit. So that's another thing to think about. If you're going through battery after battery after battery, you're heating up those ESCs, and eventually they're going to fail. So just a tip on that. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. Hope you learned something. I know many of you can relate to some of these things. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Appreciate it. Have a great day.